everyone. So excited to see so many of you here today. We are really excited for this panel this afternoon. We have some awesome panelists with us. My name is Hannah Landers. I'm the Assistant Director of Career Services here in Pamplin, and we are going to talk about AI and what that means for future careers. So I'm going to get started with some panelist introductions. Abrielle, will you go ahead and kick us off?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Abrielle Moore. I am a director at Morgan Stanley, and I work on our firm-wide artificial intelligence team. I do AI strategy and enablement coverage for two of the divisions at our company, and I'm really excited to share with you all today.
Awesome. Thanks for being here. Leanne.
Hey everybody, I'm Leanne. I'm a software engineering analyst and I work on the data and AI team serving the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid services. And I graduated from Virginia Tech 2023. And yeah, excited to talk to you guys today.
Hey, go Hokies. Thanks for being here. Neil.
Hello, everyone. My name is Neil Steckschulte. I'm a senior manager at EY. I'm in our data intelligence delivery practice, which sits under our assurance umbrella. So I help our audit teams, as well as some of our consulting clients as well, unlock the most out of their data, both through use of AI as well as advanced analytical tools.
Perfect. And Alex.
Hey all, I'm Alex Webb. I'm a solutions architect at Accenture, and I lead our AI and automation development for our platform suite. This is the work we do with some of our biggest partners like Microsoft, Salesforce, and ServiceNow. I also graduated from Virginia Tech back in 2015, BIT, and I've been building systems ever since. I'm excited to be a part of today's discussion.
Well, thank you all again so much for being here. We're really excited for this conversation. It's such a hot topic for business students, especially. So to start off, and let me say too, we have some prepared questions, but we also would really love questions from our attendees today. So anytime throughout the session today, please throw your questions in the chat, and we would love to have our panelists give their thoughts. All right, so to kick things off, I'm going to start with Abrielle. I would love to just start off with how is AI changing the nature of work in your field?
Well, yeah, as you can imagine, in financial services, particularly at companies as large as Morgan Stanley, we have a lot of manual and time-intensive processes that run across a variety of functions. And AI is really allowing us to find new ways to either facilitate these processes in partnership with humans or potentially without them in the loop. And that will free up time for individuals to really leverage their expertise and work in a more strategic manner than we've ever seen before. There's a lot of, time that we spend maybe not on things that are the most efficient, but they need to be done regardless and still serve our clients. But now we have the ability to really invest more intentionally from a time perspective in those relationships and in optimizing the types of insights that we're able to bring them and ultimately to keep reinforcing the trust that we have built in all of our clients and stakeholders. So yeah, I think it's really just providing a new opportunity to dig deeper into the things that we are known probably best for and create the most value.
Perfect. Okay. Neil, I'm going to ask you the same question. How is AI changing the nature of work?
Absolutely. So I mostly focus on our audit experience, and I started off my career for the first 7 years, also a Hokie, forgot to mention, graduated in 2017. But I think when it comes down to AI and a lot of our technologies in our assurance practice, it bubbles down to three areas. The first one is it focuses on helping enhance our audit quality. So we have a ton of tools, whether it's, our financial statement tie-out tool, which is usually a process for our accounting students, maybe some of our finance students, is a very manual process where you have to go line by line and recalculate the financial statements for clerical accuracy. It really helps out with the overall audit quality. And then also it helps the second part is it really helps our people and have a better overall experience, right? So a lot of the times when I started as a staff, there's a lot of menial like non-value added work. Like I said, like going through line by line, circling things in a red pen, circling things in a blue pen, that is done a lot now by AI. So it really helps us and really have more meaningful conversations with our clients, which then in turn is our third piece is that really helps drive value with our clients. So a lot of times our clients can't necessarily, the audit can be a process that can hold up, issuance of financials or things like back and forth conversations. But with the automation and the, really the intelligent automation on some of our overall audit processes, it allows our clients to have a ton more value in that overall financial reporting process. So it can really help get financial results out to stakeholders and investors.
Awesome. And are these mostly in-house tools that you're using, Neil, on these projects?
Yeah, so we do have a few in-house tools that we use, such as our financial statement tie-out tool or EYQ assurance knowledge. But we also use every single member of our team in our assurance practice has access to Microsoft Copilot, as well as EYQ, which is our own version of ChatGPT that allows us to, sanitize and has our own individual controls around for more free use, right? So we do very much hope that people coming into EY, coming into the assurance practice, some of the skills you're definitely learning in Pamplin will really help you to really start that career in audit.
Perfect. All right. Leanne, can you talk a little bit about how things are changing over at Accenture?
Yeah. So what we've been seeing, at least in my team, is a shift from kind of like what was said before, what we were doing manually has now been a shift of like, how can you best integrate AI into turning this task that used to take like a week into taking a day, and just making that the main focus instead of the actual just doing things like manually. The biggest shift I've seen in my team specifically is like I have done things like, on the side of working on developing pipelines. I used to spend like a lot more time doing quality assurance stuff. And so what I've seen is a huge push in using AI to do things like build test cases, take huge tables where I used to spend like at least some hours going through and looking for duplicates, looking for blank spaces, stuff like that, into putting it into like one of our AI like secured tools to say like, okay, look for the duplicates, look for the blank spaces, and then using my time to do other stuff. So that has been a really great new addition.
Awesome. All right. Coming to Alex, I'm going to change up the question just a little bit. Can you talk about a specific project that you've used AI recently and how that you incorporated that?
Yeah, sure. So just to add on a little bit for the internal tools, I think like the other panelists here, we've got our chat, we've got our coding assistants, but really where we've gained the most traction quickly are where we've been able to create tangible efficiencies and quantitative improvements for existing processes or inside of existing systems where the lift is not so high to realize the value. And so really when we're doing these things here, one of the most exciting ones I did recently was a pilot for a federal permitting system. So with that, you can imagine the regulations and the long form documents that are sent over. And it was saying, well, if I can look at these 50 to 100 pages here and do classification by sector, subsector, geography at the state and local level, can I quickly get to a screening of what I think might apply here so we can get those permits started? And kind of compare across similar projects to identify the gotchas in advance to kind of help things move through the pipeline more quickly, but also to kind of support the people who are doing those processes. We don't have these huge backlogs of things that haven't been started. We've got things at like 50, 60% where they can review them and we can start to identify patterns that really create a change. And so that was something that really resonated. Internally, we see something smaller scale with our ticketing system. So when people will call in with an issue here, it's like some of these things are starting to look similar. Can I take a first pass or a triage at those to make for a better customer experience, a faster resolution time, and also to learn what works? And to what Leanne was saying, as we're doing this, it's not great, I got it right this time, hope it looks right next time. We're codifying those best practices. So when we're starting to materialize these playbooks so our people can focus on the higher leverage work while our operations are continuing to get leaner and faster.
Great. So follow up, Alex, how would you recommend that students get prepared to be using these in-house tools? What are the skills that will translate for when they need to be able to master in-house tools in the future?
Yeah, I'd say the first thing to do is to create that bridge. Now, when you're going there and typing, outside of the prompts and the framing you have around there, without a connection to your tools, you're kind of starting fresh. So memory's helpful, but it really gets exciting when you can say, I'm bringing everything that's me with my domain knowledge into this conversation. It could be simple knowledge-based retrieval. Could be a connection to your notes. It could be a connection to your task list, your team's SOPs. So when you're going in there, you're kind of like leveraging um, what's been done in advance without needing to regurgitate every single time. And in the context of the processes that I was talking about, we're not always talking about consuming these surface level outputs and even just reading and writing back to the documents. It's getting familiar with the Canvas based builder. So if you're familiar with tools like make.com, Zapier, or Anyden, where at the highest level you have a trigger or some event that happens and a series of actions that happens after that. Think about processes like that in the building blocks of like when I start this, from left to right, what does that look like when I sketch it out? Can I connect to the tools that are there? And if there are these bottlenecks that previously were like, yeah, great, I could put this on a canvas here, but there's those bulk summarizations, that this classification and this scoring. That's a great use case to say, let me just put AI here as a step in the process, like 80% automation, 20% AI, and really create the value and something repeatable there. And that's absolutely something you can pick up now, even with your personal tools. So if you were saying, how do I go from an AI consumer, someone that's chatting, to an AI builder? It could be as simple as every day this automation run that summarizes my emails, checks the weather, and adds a task to my to-do list that says pack the umbrella and maybe leave a little bit early for class. And just like that, you already start to kind of reframe what you're building here, and you're building systems and flows that can be AI augmented versus just kind of staying in that messaging interface.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Neil, I know as a former Hokie, I'm going to ask you a similar question. What are some things students should be doing right now with AI to start flexing those skills and getting more comfortable?
Yeah, I definitely think being able to work with, different LLMs such as a ChatGPT or a Microsoft Copilot will definitely help you, because I think one of the things that I've learned, when I came out of school, one of the big focuses was the push to get big data and to use advanced analytics, which is now taught at Virginia Tech, and it's taught at such a great scale. I think a similar thing is happening with AI, and I think one of the most important things to remember is that the people of, generations, at our firm, for example, or at other firms, they don't have the skills that you necessarily will have coming out of Pamplin. I think it's important to recognize they're going to turn to you as that younger individual fresh out of school to teach them on using AI appropriately, right? And so one thing is absolutely, using those skills and being able to teach people. But I think another thing too is being able to connect and having those soft skills are also going to be super important. When I think through things like, coding, and I think coding is super, super important kind of moving forward. But what AI is not able to do is not able to connect with, a client or a senior manager, whoever it might be, like a partner, right? That you can have that one-to-one interaction with, that is not going away anytime soon. So having those soft skills are going to be super important. And then I also think a technical expertise in a specific area. So for example, I know Leanne mentioned like government work. So knowing the specifics on the government work, whatever relates, HHS or HUD or those specific regulations, because AI is not going to know it as well as some of the, technical experts that we have in different companies. So being that technical expert in that specific area, whether it's a specific sector like construction or media or hospitality, right? Being that subject matter expert is going to be also very important moving forward.
Okay, great. And then a follow-up to that, students often ask, do they need to understand the mechanics behind AI, the coding, the data science, or just how to apply that?
I think application is the most important, right? Because I think that moving forward, everyone's going to eventually learn how to use these tools, but I think it's being able to know and have a sense for when things are right, when to trust it, what it kind of knows, and knowing the outer limits of it versus knowing when you really got to drill in, right? If knowing the differences between the two, if it's just formatting an email or sending something, obviously I'm going to do a quick read through, making sure everything kind of reads through. But if it's something related to, again, like healthcare regulation or hospitality codes or construction, like construction codes. That's something that we're, percentage of completion accounting, ASC 606. That's what I'm, as the accountant, I'm the expert at. So I'm really going to drill in and be like, no, actually, that's not correct. Or, we also have tools in our firm that will help us go directly to the technical guidance as opposed to just having us kind of sit and think through it in-house. So I think the more technical, that's where the more in-house kind of driven solutions are going to be. And so I think that'll help you build up your technical expertise as well as again those soft skills. Those are the two things that are definitely not going away, in my opinion.
Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, soft skills are so important. And Alex, looks like you had something to add there.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing, that there will still be a place for the technical expert to bring that domain expertise. But one thing that we found helpful with people who are eager to start but come in without any understanding is that they don't necessarily understand the constraints around it. It's not just like a magic box that you reach into and you get an answer. You kind of want to know what model feels appropriate. There's some pricing, generally the capability, so that when you hear the hype or you see something in commercial before it comes over to federal, you'll know if it's actually worth its salt or not. And then when you're picking up new skills, to kind of just dive maybe a couple inches down, just like, all right, I don't know how to code, but I can spend a couple hours on a weekend to ask a better question and to use it as something that helps you learn so that if you are inquisitive and you can go there, you can pick up things quickly and you're not just stuck in one lane. You're like, I may not be an expert in all of these, but I'm conversant at some of these levels, and it allows me to get farther from idea to execution than I would have otherwise. And then you can absolutely loop in those people, and it's more of like a show and go versus letting the idea get stuck there. And I know that we've certainly rewarded that internally, and absolutely something we look for in hiring, where it's like we've introduced build challenges where it's like, hey, you've got some time to take this home. Let's see how you think about this and implement it, knowing and encouraging the use of these tools.
Okay, interesting. So you're saying that's part of the interview process to ask them to build something?
For some of our roles, there is a build challenge now between the behavioral and the case interview. And again, it's not something where it's like this giant technical barrier, but it's like, hey, think about using these tools and show us what you come up with. And it's more of a conversation starter than just kind of going off of the resume.
Interesting. Okay. Kind of building on that, Abrielle, I want to come to you. How do you see AI influencing the typical career path, from entry level on, in the next few years in your industry?
Yeah, so I think this is not exclusive to financial services, but definitely is the case at many companies like Morgan Stanley, where typically you'd see the kind of apprenticeship model be the way that a lot of our entry level folks get caught up to speed on how they would engage in certain functions. And a lot of the work that is done at that level are the things that many companies are looking at, either automating or augmenting with AI. And so if companies historically have relied on individuals coming into their workforce, doing that type of work repeatedly and having that be the thing that builds up that expertise, and then that opportunity is no longer available because a machine is doing it for these individuals now, we kind of have to ask, where would that opportunity to develop that expertise come in? And I think what we're probably going to see is really a shift towards not being the creator of some of these materials or, executing these functions, but maybe being the reviewer. And the difference will be that you're not necessarily learning from doing the process over and over again, but rather you're learning from understanding when the AI is doing it right or wrong. And I think the instruction will have to then shift too from more senior employees around how to be a bit more discriminate and precise when it comes to evaluating what a good output looks like and what is actually going to be able to be implemented from a business perspective. And so I think just kind of going back to the question about what will be important for people to come into these roles with, it's not just that understanding of how to use AI. Obviously, that will be a part of their job, but really the ability to think critically and understand, that everything you get is not going to be great, and to be able to upskill themselves quickly too. There may not be as much bandwidth from the perspective of senior people to kind of provide that expertise, but they will have probably access to tools that can teach them what they need to know about like why the answer they got was right. So really being more willing to engage in the question of, okay, what is it about what I've received that makes this a quality answer? And also using AI to not only give it that answer, but to engage with that question and think about like how they can really become more skilled in that domain or the area that they've come into will probably be what we're seeing, junior people have to be tasked with, maybe being a bit more independent when it comes to building up that expertise at the initial stages, and not, and hopefully that would maybe provide an opportunity too for them to be exposed to certain types of tasks that would not be thought of to be given to like an analyst or an associate, right? Like maybe you're doing more client-facing work, or maybe you're thinking a bit more critically about the strategy behind a particular business solution, as opposed to just being the one to execute the deck on it. That ultimately gets delivered by a more senior person because the kind of brain exercise of behind the vetting of those materials is being done by people who are a lot earlier on in their career.
Awesome. And I think too, we went around in the beginning, but I don't think we got a chance to hear from you, Gabrielle, about some specific tools that you all use at Morgan Stanley or some specific projects that are going on with AI in your world.
Yeah, happy to talk about that. So, kind of similarly to a couple of the other panelists, we have, a mix of, some vendor solutions that are more general purpose in nature, like Microsoft Copilot, ChatGPT Enterprise, for example. And then we also have a variety of solutions that we've developed in-house, that are more integrated into our systems and workflows. When it comes to tools like, Microsoft Copilot, or the more general purpose AI tools, those are in the hands of 97% of our employees. So there really is quite an opportunity for individuals to find, those interventions of this technology at their desk that would help them be more efficient. But to speak to some more specific examples, in relation to the work that we do and maybe some of the developed work that we've put forward as far as AI solutions are concerned, I think the kind of investment banking or just investment, or institutional securities group business is really interesting. They have a lot of client materials that they have to prepare. Again, typically that's something that more junior bankers are tasked with. And we've really been looking at the ability to leverage AI to take these, 80-hour workflows and condense them into, a draft that could be produced in less than 2 hours in some cases. And we've seen a lot of success in the ability to take in more context too. So maybe thinking about like more personalization to think a little bit more strategically about the way that we might approach some of these client engagements to show them why we're the right company to work with. Being able to synthesize tons of data that would be included and visualized in a deck, for example. Um, that work would have been done manually before, would have taken lots of time, not just to find the data, but then to also put together the visualizations. And we're able to kind of automate that too. So, um, again, thinking about like, what does that mean for a junior banker? Some folks might look at that and they might be concerned because that is all we've known a junior investment banker to do, for many decades, perhaps. But I think that it really does provide an opportunity for these employees to think a bit more strategically, more critically, maybe even be exposed to more opportunities because as the time is being reduced per client, now we can maybe think about taking on more clients. There's more diversification and solutions and situations. So, yeah, we're seeing a lot of really cool stuff being done across the firm, but I think that's one that comes to mind.
Awesome. Okay, thanks for sharing. Leanne, I'm going to come to you. I know one of the concerns that Abrielle just touched on is students are concerned about the job market and what AI means for that. Can you talk a little bit about your perspective and what that means for our students who might be graduating in the next few years?
Yeah, for sure. Like I went to recruit, so I've been doing recruiting for 2 years, and I feel like for lack of a better word, like the vibes have changed a lot when it comes to how things were last year versus this year. And so, just to start, I feel for you guys, like it's a lot out there. But when it comes to AI and the job market, my perspective, at least seeing it from kind of like the more entry level side of things, I see that the way that I feel like you guys could show your value as a potential employee is kind of showing, like, again, I feel like our role as the younger, like the more entry level people is to be able to use these tools, but also kind of like teach and bring the more advanced side of these tools to and show kind of like where they would bring value. And I feel like what I've noticed when the recruiters were all sitting in a circle discussing like which students they thought stood out the most, what I heard like be brought up a lot is students that found a niche. Like it could be as random as like I don't know, saxophone playing or something, and like created some type of an app or like built some type of tool using AI or like got some certification that helped them build something that helped their niche, like grew on their niche, something that stood out like that. Um, that I think helps a lot in standing out in the job market rather than kind of like out looking outside in trying to find what you think they would want to see. Like I think showing your personality in a world of like monotonous AI slop, like that stands out a lot more than you think it will. So that helps a lot. And yeah, I think that that's what helped me, what's helped me a lot in showing my value at Accenture because things like like what I've seen other analysts and myself do a lot to stand out is like not just use AI to improve like efficiency or produce stuff like we will do that, but also go out of our way to kind of do like side projects, like for example, like building RAG apps that might help the team. Like um, for one thing, like that I worked on was like building a RAG app to help our team be able to take all the documentation, all the information, and put it into kind of like an app so that we could more easily be able to sort through it, like asking the AI that is trained on the documentation to be like, hey, for this table from Medicare's like records, can what's the unique buy value for, XYZ column? Stuff like that is really, really helpful. But yeah, just kind of being yourself and then finding out how you can kind of use AI and create stuff with AI to build on that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And a follow-up to that, we had a speaker a few months back, and they were talking about the importance of positioning yourself as an expert in the AI space. Is it true that a student could post and interact with articles and write things on LinkedIn? Is that something that helps them stand out? Are recruiters looking at their actions on LinkedIn profiles?
I think yes, like huge, like LinkedIn is huge for that because I think everyone like when you're a recruiter and you're just like getting resumes, it's like yes, another resume, great. But when you like look them up, like at least okay, going back to like the sitting around the circle and reviewing students, what came up a lot is like, oh shoot, look this kid like has a Substack or this guy like created this type of thing, and you can't really fit that all into one resume. And even if you do, like no recruiter is gonna sit down and look at your resume for like 15 minutes reading through all the little text. Like I think LinkedIn is kind of like I think of it as kind of like Instagram, but for your job. Like don't take it too seriously. I know LinkedIn's kind of annoying sometimes and feels kind of fake, but if you add stuff that is yourself, it helps you stand out a lot because you can add that video of whatever you did in your side projects or like link your articles, stuff like that. So definitely LinkedIn, big good one.
Awesome. Thanks, Leanne. Yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit earlier, Neil and Alex, about soft skills and the importance of that. And I think there's something about a resume, which is important and necessary, but also you get a little bit more personality when you look at someone's LinkedIn profile. And so you're able to show professionalism and writing skills and all that. So, I mean, definitely for our students, be thinking about the projects that you've done in your classes, but also some of the things you've done on your own. And if that's not anything, maybe it should be something you explore and just for fun, and it doesn't have to go on LinkedIn if it doesn't turn out the way you want it. But yeah, that's great advice. Neil.
Yeah, I mean, I
Even
think
if it's
I was just gonna say the one thing that I've always noticed and kind of piggybacking on Leanne's point is that ability. It's not just the I've submitted my resume and then I'm good to go, but I think Pamplin also gives you a lot of opportunities. I think of Business Horizons as one is where you can go and you can interface and connect with people. And I think that when there's a lot of resumes that are being submitted to a lot of these larger companies, that if you connect with somebody at Business Horizons, and then if you follow up with them and you create a connection, the same thing happens in my field, right? Where I'm, talking with prospective client and I follow up and I send an email. And I say, hey, It was great to meet you. And the same sort of way, those soft skills they're very, I think, very important in today's society. And, I think our office managing partner talked a lot about that, is that the soft skills go a lot further than technological or even technical skills. And I think your technological skills you're definitely going to be more skewed and more better at technological skills than the people that are currently in the workforce. And we definitely use those to your advantage, but also the soft skills of being able to be coachable, but also being able to set yourself apart by creating those connections are super, super important.
Just to add on there, I mean, I think everyone here has said it. It's going to be harder if all you're doing is a passive resume drop, and setting yourself apart with the networking events and your personal portfolio are a strong way. And I wouldn't even go as far as to say you need to position yourself as an AI expert. I would just say position yourself as a doer. AI is making it easier to have like a really nice looking resume or to sound competent, but even harder to demonstrate competence and to demonstrate agency. And so when you're bringing these things in, it might suck. The first couple ones might be terrible, but you have experience, you did it, you have a take on it, and that's more than most. And to demonstrate that you're someone that has the wherewithal to kind of go out and do that and pursue and learn means that you can adapt in a business environment. And it does set people apart. And again, with the build challenge internally and in our external recruiting, we see that, and it's a way to champion our people on the way up and to create opportunities that might not come to you if you were just in one lane for your role. It's like, if I built this on the side you saw was interesting, well, gee, maybe I go support something over on this team now. The momentum is there. The time investment to do it is small. And so you should just keep shooting those shots there. And if it sounds interesting, just see where it goes. The cost is low. You probably have these tools available internally. I know a lot of these providers have education plans. If you don't have it, pursue it. And just see where things go from there. But I think that's a very strong compliment to whatever you have on the resume. And especially when you go through and talk to the stories, it might be, we all took the same classes, there's a GPA and there's an internship. But if your story includes something like that, that's different than the previous years. And for now, I still think there's an opening for you to really hold that up and differentiate yourself.
Even looking further ahead too, I know now, I don't think this has changed very much. There still are probably degrees that for certain jobs they look for someone with that degree or certain certifications or whatever that might be. But I really do feel like as AI continues to progress, those things will start to be a little bit less important because that information, I mean, obviously within certain niches, it's really important. But for a lot of people, particularly at the entry level, if you can get up to speed on that information quickly enough, then your background may not be as important, but being able to demonstrate these softer competencies and really thinking about, which I think all of you have talked about, ways to showcase them. And also like things like critical thinking and the ability to strategize that, can't be replicated by AI. And I know, Neil, you mentioned, the ability to make relationships and really communicate effectively too. Those are going to be incredibly important as well, as AI can't kind of replicate that human touch. So think about in a more creative sense, outside of just the use of AI, the other types of activities and maybe things that you might have been interested in pursuing with your time, but feel pressured to not pursue because it doesn't fit the mold of what might be hired within a certain space. I think that mold is probably becoming a lot more malleable now. And thinking about how to tell the story of the way that has prepared you to step into these competencies that are going to be more expected, maybe more rare in the near term at least, and really valuable as AI starts to get integrated more in work and replace some of the things that we've been doing will be important as well.
Awesome. All right. Well, we have a question in the chat. I'm open to anyone taking this. What are some of the emerging business functions or job titles related to AI that students should keep an eye out for that aren't necessarily mainstream today, but might be soon?
So I can start off with that one. I think when it comes to data and then when it comes to a lot of the flashy things that we talked about today, I also, in addition to working at EY, I'm the vice chair of our Technology and Innovation Council for the Virginia Society of CPAs. I think of the CPA function as the original data analyst. We've been data analysts for hundreds of years now. And I think that, for example, at EY, one of the things that we're doing is we're starting with our 360 careers. And so when students come in as either an audit professional or a tax professional, they get a not just their individual working on their own individual audit work or tax work, but they get an opportunity to see all sides of our business, whether that's in consulting or whether that's in our mergers and acquisitions group, or whether that's in a specific industry that they like, or they can come work in our data intelligence delivery group. So there's a lot of different experiences that I think that it may not necessarily, and AI is going to be a huge part of our audit profession moving forward. As I mentioned, some of the tools that we have in our arsenal. So AI is going to be embedded, I think, in almost every single profession. But one of the ways that we're doing it at EY is that we're trying to give people a breadth of experiences, so that they're able to have, again, like I said, build on those soft skills, but really get those technical experiences and client experiences when it comes to industries or technology that they're looking for, so that they can be that professional of the future.
I think within the AI industry, there have probably been maybe more non-technical roles coming to play. I don't know how long they'll be around, quite frankly, because I think a lot of them are really geared towards ushering in this transformation. And I do question, once that transformation's done, what will these things become? And I also think in some ways they're kind of existing functions, but dressed up with AI as the focus of them. So I've been seeing a lot around like applied AI. So really helping businesses think about like what does AI look like in practice? So that's maybe an interesting thing for folks to consider. A lot of things on like education adoption engagement. So thinking about getting the workforce equipped to use AI more. But I think in many ways, I would more so consider that the roles and titles will probably stay the same, but the work that's done will probably change quite dramatically. And so just thinking about what that shift might look like will be critical. So what types of experiences may you have needed 5 years ago that you may not need now? And what will, an individual in X, Y, and Z industry likely spend their time using AI for? Um, that might be a good way to kind of prepare yourself to get into those spaces.
Yeah, thanks for that. That's super interesting to think about the application of AI kind of being, those roles will be temporary but shifting as well. All right, we're getting some questions in the chat. So I am going to go to Alex for this one. So this is talking about government. So thinking about cybersecurity. How can I leverage AI in my industry, which is government, while keeping confidentiality in check?
Yeah, so obviously there's a bit of a lag between what's available in the commercial space and federal. You can look at what some of those accreditation looks like, but the short of it is to be able to use some of these models, they need to be a FedRAMP, but there are additional security boundaries about what data can be sent there and what can't, specific to each engagement, but they are very clear on what you can and can't use there. So if you see some flashy tool that's like, oh, we have everything under the hood, maybe not immediately available. But again, if you have that foundational knowledge to say, this looks very flashy, but I know it's Claude or one of the OpenAI models underneath of it. You know that you'll be able to bring some of that capability over. But that's not to say you should stop learning now and say, okay, I can have some breathing room here, because you can't. Things are moving so quickly to the tune of like weeks and months. So to kind of like maintain your finger on the pulse and the signal, I'd say stay on top of some of the industry newsletters. One of my favorite ones and the course programs are from deeplearning.ai. It's Andrew Ng, very highly credentialed in the field. Highly recommend those courses there. A lot of them are free. They send a daily newsletter and have a bunch of these like bite-sized courses that are like 4 to 8 hours where you can pick something up, like I was saying, in the weekend and be conversant going into the fall.
I guess follow-up question to Alex on that. Do you think, especially for our younger students, do you think that there's more of an opportunity, like you said, there's this lag, right, between government and commercial, and I see it too, right, with our government clients versus our commercial clients. Do you think it's more of an opportunity for our younger students to maybe catch up or come in, ready to go if you're a freshman, sophomore versus someone who's a junior or senior?
Yeah, I think so, especially if you're staying on top of it. It's like you can see what's proven in the commercial space versus being first mover, don't know. Like there are some patterns that are coming out that you're like, oh, when I see this problem again, I hear about it from my clients. There's something for me to look at and extend off of. And so there's nothing stopping you from working with that right now and having like an arsenal of of patterns and ways you think of the problems, so that when you do jump in there, you can get started. And if you do, again, just take that focus down a layer from the consumer apps to just like the core components, the chat models, the supporting architecture, the general limitations around it. You have a pretty good idea of the problem space when you're hearing things for the first time. And that's skill that we're trying to cultivate kind of across our business. Some of our titles are flattening out, a lot of them are staying the same. Like Abriel, you had said, where it's like there's just more responsibility inside of the function. But for some of them, we kind of just like make it a composite where it's like forward deployed engineer. And it's like, what's that buzzword? What do we have here? It's like, well, you're in front of the client, you're doing the functional requirements. You have some development expertise. You understand the cost piece of things. You understand some of the compliance, and you can wear multiple hats and bounce around, knowing you're part of a broader team. So being well rounded certainly doesn't hurt. But this doesn't hurt you.
If I can add just quickly, though, I mean, I don't purport to have any experience working in government or supporting government, but financial services is a highly regulated industry, and one of the things we think about often and have to constantly be applying into the way that we are incorporating AI into our work is the way we govern it. That is, thinking about the way that we've been instructed to regulate our use of AI, whether it's from like a regulatory perspective or even just kind of in an anticipatory perspective, the types of security and controls that need to be in place in order to feel like we're using it responsibly, and in a way that would be both appropriate for our clients, and the governments that regulate us, right? So and that hasn't slowed us down per se. I think for a while it did, in the sense that we had to figure out how could we remain compliant and balance that compliance with the speed of innovation that we were witnessing and experiencing with many of the providers, in the space. But eventually that's going to be solved. And I think there's going to be some degree of parity, and I don't know what time frame that's going to happen in, but I don't know that there's necessarily like a time bought. I think you kind of have to just like stick with it. And to your point though, Alex, I do think that like the core components really don't differ all that much across the various providers. There is a ton of news and a ton of noise, and always, some LLM provider or AI company saying that they've cracked the code on X, Y, and Z thing. And that may or may not be available in certain industries. But nevertheless, like when there are major developments, I think it's important to know that they're probably going to be coming maybe just a little bit slower, but being ready for the change is definitely the way to go.
I I think Gabriel brought up a really good point around governance, and I think this is a really good point I would give to our students is that I think one of the most important things when we talk with our clients from a financial and accounting perspective about the future state of AI, the number one first thing they have to do is they have to establish a governance model. And so as companies are starting to establish this governance model, what's really important and what I think maybe you could do as you go into some of these interviews with some of these companies is that if you understand what their governance model is and how do you fit into that framework, right? So for example, we have our AI assurance framework at EY. We have one for tax and consulting as well. But what's your piece of that in that pie, right? So for example, one of the things we can't do obviously is we can't put client sensitive data into, LLMs, right? So knowing certain things like that, reading up on that company's governance model will definitely set you apart when it comes to AI.
Awesome. Okay. Just kind of keep rolling through our student questions here. So the student is curious about programs that balance AI theory and practical implementation. Are there specific certifications or courses that you all would recommend to stand out or just to help prepare for the workforce?
This might be a hot take. I don't tend to think that certifications are super helpful. I have some colleagues who have taken, certifications, but I do prefer to really stay plugged into the news, stay plugged into like any white papers or research that's published, and make sure that I'm just like using it in my personal and work life. Um, I think those three practices have helped me stay relatively up to date. I think the problem with a lot of certifications is that, unless they're really being put forward by a model provider, They probably are stale and have old information, and there's really no point in paying for something or spending the time on something that is not going to, give you what's most current and up to date when it comes to this technology. So I know it takes a little bit more work, but I would encourage you then to use an AI tool and to, I think Alex's point, maybe automate a report or some sort of task that will allow for you to get those things delivered to you as opposed to you having to really go out of your way to find them and then just make sure you're staying on top of it. But I think for many people who are not actively working in the AI industry, being that on top of all of the changes in this technology is not as important. It's kind of like saying to someone that you need to know everything that's going on in the financial markets if you're not a research analyst, like, or an active investor, unless it's something that's really interesting to you. I think having a basic understanding of how to use these tools effectively will set you apart for now, and then will just be kind of a base requirement or expectation as the years go on and we see adoption hit a level where it's the norm.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that's different from what our students are currently hearing as far as certification. So thank you for that insight. Leanne, any additional thoughts from the Accenture side of things?
Yeah. So what I was thinking when it comes to certs is like, I feel like, yes, they can be kind of outdated if you just kind of go at it from, like I said, like the outside in of like, oh, what do they want to see? And then like, let me get a cert in that versus like, at least what I've heard and like, again, when I'm overhearing what recruiters and the hiring managers are saying, it's like, they'll be like, oh, this person is like, BIT cybersecurity major, and they also got their I forgot the name of the specific cert, but there's one comp TIA cert or whatever. Like, and then if somebody's built some AI app or something, they'll be like, oh, they also have their cert in generative AI. Like it's kind of like a little like, oh, okay, they did the thing, but also they know a little bit more about it. Like it's not something that's gonna get you like, oh yeah, they have this cert, we must hire. But it's definitely good to have if you feel like you're like already in a specific niche and you want to kind of just be like, yeah, I know a lot about this. So that's kind of my take on that.
Okay, great. Thank you both. All right. Our next question from the students. What positions do you see poised for growth as they add AI to their functionality and become more useful outside of purely becoming more efficient? Any thoughts there?
This is so I think within like our sales roles, there's because if you think about like capacity creation, that's like the buzzword I feel like I hear a lot of people using. It's hard to kind of translate that into anything meaningful unless there's something else that you could be doing that's generating more value. And it's not to say that that doesn't apply to a lot of the roles, but I think it's a lot clearer when it comes to, you're literally limited by how much time you can spend with your clients. So if you're in a role that's more sales oriented and the time you're not spending on manual tasks could be used to either invest more in the relationships you have with existing clients and maybe win more business that way, or try to, target more prospects and potentially win a larger book of business. I think that that's an interesting area that's ripe for opportunity. And I think that applies to other client-facing roles. And yeah, I'm curious to hear if there are any other thoughts from the rest of the panel.
Yeah, I think that from the accounting and finance function, what we're seeing is that it fully transforms somebody from just someone who's the record keeper of the books to the truly business advisor, right? So it's the ability, some of the things that we're seeing, a lot of the AI is being driven at the individual software level. SAP and Oracle are the two most common softwares we see, and they're driving a ton of AI and automation transformation. But I think that's allowing controllers, CFOs to really have a mastery of their number and really dive into their business as opposed to building out forecasting models or diving into account reconciliations or really focusing on like the close for half the month, right? So with this ability now is that they really have with technology at their fingertips, they have the ability to really know their business. And I think a lot of times those questions, which allow them to make decisions faster. One of the things I did touch on is from a regulatory perspective, all public companies have to file, quarterly financial statements in a matter of 45 days at a max, right? So before, right, you could close the books in 40 and, go to market with earnings and things like that. But now with technology, CFOs can answer questions, an uncomfortable question on an earnings call or something like that with a lot quicker because they have more breadth of the knowledge of the business, because they're not spending a lot of their time chasing down account reconciliations, like why doesn't this number tie to that number, right? So it's going to be a lot, and that goes all the way down, right? And I think that goes down to the staff level, the staff accountant level too, that there's a lot more value creation and time better spent on things that really drive value for the business.
All right, we are going into our last student question. Attendees, if you have any last minute questions, now's your time. All right, so from Francisco, if AI is taking over most entry-level positions in some industries, how can someone break into those industries? Any tips?
I I wouldn't say it's taking over the entry level positions in our industry, specifically at EY. Like I think one of the things that it's enhancing in our recognition, like I said earlier, with the 360 careers of it's evolving our understanding that the accounting function is a lot more now than just debits to the left, credits to the right, right? And I think that it's an understanding that really when people go to a firm like EY or like Accenture or Morgan Stanley, they kind of want a wide breadth of experience. So I think one of the things I don't think that entry level work is going away. I think just maybe the form of work is going away. And I think one of the things also too is that there is going to be a lot of value unlocked and there's going to be a lot of new opportunities and things that are open. For example, one of the things that we're doing is we're using our data to have quality insight discussions on some of the things that we see in your data, right? And we can have those conversations because before we were always focused on tying out this number, tying out that number in a year-end audit. So I think that new opportunities are going to be unlocked. And I don't think that entry level work is going away, especially at some of the entry level firms, like all the ones that are here.
Yeah,
I'm in
just add
full
on.
agreement. Sorry.
Go
Did you
ahead.
want Alex? Oh, okay, sure. I was just gonna say I'm in full agreement. It's not gone. We need people to enter the workforce. And I think I would look at it more as an opportunity to demonstrate a different set of skills and to maybe not be locked into really tedious things for the first 4 years of your career, where that was maybe not the experience of your predecessors. The head of my division often talks about he did not step into a meeting for the first 5 years and just like built PowerPoint decks. And that is unheard of now, but I think certainly will be the case in the next 3 to 4 years. And I think what might be something to set you apart, though, is really thinking about how to position yourself as someone who is ready to not just be building a PowerPoint deck or not just build a data report. Maybe those aren't the skills that you really showcase in your resume as heavily. Being able to instill confidence that maybe you could be put in front of a client with a little bit of coaching a lot faster than you might have been if you had entered the workforce 3 years ago, or you have strategic developmental ideas to bring to the table about how to do things better. And then, of course, thinking about the fact that you can use AI well, will be a part of what you're evaluated on. So I think it's really just rethinking and reshifting the way that you understand how you will be evaluated and ensuring that your skill set matches that. And that you're, open and malleable or flexible to being coached in a different way than you might have been before. But I mean, I guess you wouldn't know what that would have looked like. And I think that's a good thing, that, it's not going to be as mundane, perhaps, from a day to day for a lot of our entry-level employees.
That's the same thing I was going to add. When I had mentioned before about being able to demonstrate the competence and to have that agency. It's positioning you to be able to move well laterally, where you're not like identifying with one posting's job functions. It's I can pick this up or I can learn how to pick this up so that if you ask me to do this, it's yes and you can figure out how to get in there and take on that role and learn. Because when you are coming in, or the expectation isn't that you're perfect day one, it's that you can learn, that you're coachable, that you have the drive to figure it out. And if you've demonstrated that as you go through the process and you're familiar with these tools, you can pick up what's thrown at you and really start to thrive.
Yeah, that's a perfect note to end on because truly that is so important. You're not going to come in day one knowing everything. I know there's some imposter syndrome going around in our students right now, which I totally understand, but it's all about what you're able to learn and what you're able to take on and say yes and exactly. So thank you guys so much. I know we're up on time, but this was so, so insightful. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon, and hopefully our attendees got some good insights and info. Attendees, I would assume that these are some good folks to maybe hit follow on LinkedIn and keep up with their career journey. But yeah, thank you guys so much for your time and hope you all have a good evening.